All right, everyone. Good afternoon and welcome to Founders Take. I am your host, Brian Antolin, Program Manager at Line Run, and we're so happy to have you here today. Line Run is an experiential career and industry education platform for tomorrow's workforce. We empower our community of leaders to connect, innovate, and grow through media, events, and programs such as this afternoon's session. So happy to have all of you here and equally thrilled to have my friend, Rich Keller, here to join us and share his wealth of wisdom and knowledge. Rich is the founder of Catalyst Branding Foundations, and he is an incredible and a passionate motivational speaker who's on a mission to transform 1 million lives one word at a time. So that one word is going to be a recurring theme here.
Sounds crazy.
With Catalyst as his one word, Rich understands challenges associated with trying to discover and what makes you stand out. He has learned that you can conquer life's obstacles and reach excellence when you uncover your core value, which he defines as who you are and not what you do. So really important. So with an MBA from Wharton at University of Pennsylvania and 25 years of branding experience at powerhouse companies such as Nabisco, Kraft Foods, and Godiva, Rich now applies his marketing expertise to personal branding. He travels the country, or at least he did travel the country, speaking at high schools, colleges, entrepreneurship conferences, and corporations, motivating young adults to craft their personal brands in one word and turn it into their greatest asset so they can stand out, conquer obstacles, reach excellence, and score. So how did I do?
You did amazing, dude. Thank you so much. I'm really grateful to be here.
Definitely. And one of the very first things you and I share is before March 2020, we were traveling a lot. And now that, abrupt pause.
In a snap,
we had to come up with completely different ways to really reach and activate our community. So, this is really timely, and I'm so thankful to have you.
Yeah, and this is one of the reasons why I believe that knowing your core value in one word is really important during a pandemic, because you can pivot so much simpler and easier. And that's what I'm doing right now. And we'll talk about that.
Definitely. And, we'll just dive right in.
Yeah.
You have this incredible wealth of experience, and particularly with your previous career involving helping top brands find their voice. And by top brands, we mentioned them just a couple seconds ago, really top brands. How did you originally get involved in marketing, and how did that shape your current definition of personal branding?
Always take a deep breath when I start my first answer and start the game. So just a little bit of how I got into this. I went to Binghamton University, and I graduated with an accounting degree in 1989. So I have officially aged myself as we start this interview. I'm 52, and I spent 5 years in accounting and absolutely hated it. And that's part of a little bit of my journey and my story that I hope your listeners take away on, what I did in the beginning that was probably, if I had to do it over again, would have been very different. So about 5 years into accounting, I went to Wharton, the University of Pennsylvania, and I received my MBA in marketing and strategy in 1996. And I spent the next 25 years in consumer products brand marketing, which I loved. I mean, there's no doubt accounting to marketing, very different. Although the accounting degree did help because it's all about, running a business. And Brian, over the course of my career, I learned the true power of what it is to be a brand. And it's probably the most common question I get. What is a brand? And the truth is, everybody has a definition of what they think it is. And I want to share my definition and a little bit about my insight behind it. And to me, a brand is simply an emotional identity that differentiates products, services, and people. Very simply. And the real interesting thing throughout my career is that you sell products, which is very functional, but you engage with brands. And that engagement means driving emotion through storytelling. And we actually buy more with our heart than our head. And I want your listeners to understand that that's why we pay $7 for a latte at Starbucks. Okay. If you really thought about that purchase, which is 90% milk, 10% coffee, you'd run out of the store. But the truth is, we connect with our heart, not with our head. And one way to connect is to show consumers the value that your brand brings to the world to improve the lives of others. And I call this a brand's core value, which we're going to spend a lot of time talking about today. And a brand's number one job is to give away that core value to improve the lives of others. Because the one thing that a brand has to do is solve a problem. And if you don't know the problem your brand is solving, you won't win. And if you think about it, branding, money is just an exchange of value. I buy a product in the store, I pay for it, it delivers a core value to me because that's why I'm buying the brand. And so I realized throughout my career that people are essentially brands because they're being sold every day. And this is a hard concept because a lot of people don't want to be brands. They don't want to be sold. I'm not a, I'm a person, but I want everybody to think about the following because it's really a mindset shift. Okay. When you're applying to college, the university is purchasing you in exchange for a degree. I mean, if you think about it, you're accepted means come to my school. I bought you. I'm going to give you a degree. You're applying for a job. In that interview, you are selling yourself. And what are they purchasing you for? A paycheck. And if you apply for a leadership position, the organization is purchasing you for that title. And so my whole goal right now, when I left my corporate career, is to help young adults understand what I believe is the true definition of personal branding. And it's coming at it from my corporate brand marketing career, where I did craft identities for some of the world's most iconic brands. The Planters peanuts of the world, Godiva chocolate, Chips Ahoy. And the number one goal is to craft your emotional identity in such a way that people get to know, like, and trust you. So you have to, in my opinion, my insight, you have to uncover this core value and treat yourself like you are a brand. By the way, that's not a negative thing. People say, I don't want to be a brand. This is $1 billion brands are out there. This is not a negative game. It's your mindset that's playing that trick on you.
I really love how you approach it because, yeah, it's a difficult conversation for people to have, to realize that, yeah, it's everything comes down to you're buying or you're selling something. No
That's
matter
it.
what you do or how you look at it, it comes down to it because, one, it's easy for us to, classify it, but then two, if you look at the transactional nature of our society, yeah, we stress building relationships, building communities, but at the end of the day, it's, do people trust you enough to take that next step and either invest or partner? And
That's
it's,
exactly right. I
and
mean,
those two words are just like a cover for buying and selling.
you can't say to somebody, what's your elevator pitch when you go into an interview and not think in your head, I'm being sold. And so, and what you are, because I'm going to buy you, give you the job, and you're going to get a paycheck, and you're going to give me what? Your core value, because I'm hiring you because I need to solve problems and to drive my company's growth. So the only reason why I'm passionate about what I do is because I come at it from my corporate career. So I pivoted from brands to people with that same knowledge, because I do believe if you give your core value away, more people are going to want to come into your world because they need the help. It's not about you boasting about yourself. That's not what branding is. It's about you saying to people, I have a value that can help you win. And that's why people are going to, quote unquote, purchase you. And it's just a mindset. It's the game changes when you start thinking that way. Because if you own a phone, you're a brand. And if you don't control that brand, somebody else is going to control it. Because the game changed when digital came into the world. It wasn't like when I was growing up, we didn't have email, we didn't have phones. So the only way people knew you was by either you sent a letter to someone, you were in a magazine, or we were interviewed on TV, 3 channels. Today, whole different game. So when you own your phone and you love it and you love the posting and everything, the minute I Google you, that's your brand. So that's why I really try to instill in people, take ownership of your brand, because as Jeff Bezos says, your brand is what other people say about you when you're not in the room. That's it. That is your brand. You can fight it all you want, but perception is reality. And if you make them equal, you're going to win. You're going to win because you put yourself in the front.
Definitely. And I love that you double down on perception is reality. And I think that gives us a really great bridge into learning more about, you as a person. So you share with us a little bit about what you did in your work, and it's really incredible. But I think it's equally incredible what you've done in your life and what you've went through, and the fact that I see you as an inspiration, and
Thank you.
this beacon of positivity. And
Thank you.
no matter what you're going through, you always shine and try to help lift people. And I think I really want to really dig deep and to dig into your personal journey and how that has shaped your approach to helping people share their own story.
Yeah, no, this is great. I love to share with people my journey because I want to inspire people, but I also want to start by saying I'm a catalyst. That's my one word. And what I didn't realize until I really got reflective on my story was how much I really did change the game as a catalyst and all the hills and valleys I went through. So what I would say to your listeners is there's 5 factors that have really impacted my self-esteem along my personal journey, and I'd like to take you through each one because I think it should give you guys a sense of like who I am and why I'm doing what I'm doing today. So the first one that I would say is that I lived my entire childhood in fear of my dad. I grew up in a home where my parents fought all the time, and I honestly thought my dad was going to kill my mom every night. And I lived with that. I mean, it was just something in the back of my head, and it was always like, what's going to happen when dad gets home? And there was a fear there, and that's not a good way to start life, but that's just part of what happened to me. And I had a dad who would pretty much he said it a lot, but he also I think showed it in his actions. He would always say that I wasn't athletic enough, and the reason for that is because my older brother, was the captain of the high school football team, went to Princeton. I mean, pretty cool, no doubt. And I just wasn't athletic. I chose bowling as my sport in high school, which I thought was great, by the way. And so like, I'm just listening in my head as I looked back on my life and, this idea of not being athletic enough and not having that confidence. And then my brother and sister, I have a twin sister, every day would not necessarily say it as I just said before about my dad, but in their showing of it, I was never smart enough because I couldn't get into an Ivy League college like they did. And it was always that joke, like it wasn't like being mean per se, but I think as you look back, if you hear it so many times and you're in an environment where your brother and sister are succeeding, and by the way, I graduated 4 out of 800 in my high school class. So like I wasn't dumb, but I had this in my head that I just wasn't that good. And then, I went to college, I went to Binghamton, as I said, and, my friends, I had a great life outside of the home. It wasn't one of those things where, I would say troubled, but in my mind, I was worthless. I had no value. And I graduated college, as I said, as an accountant. And then my world literally crashed, Brian, when I was diagnosed with testicular cancer at 26 years old. I literally woke up with a cancer diagnosis and I thought, two things. Number one, I was going to die. And number two, that I was never going to be a dad. And as crazy as my childhood was, I couldn't wait to be a dad. And I thought, I'm done because I didn't know anything about this cancer. And thankfully, through a lot of help and support with my wife, who I was dating at the time, and her parents, her dad is a doctor, I got better and it was great. And it was literally, I got into Wharton a week before I got diagnosed. And so I finished my treatment and made the decision to go to business school like a week after I was done, which I thought in the beginning, it was like, should I really do this? But I'm so glad I did it. It was like, go out there and make it happen. And everything was great. I went to business school, I started a career, I got married, I had 2 kids, and then 17 years after my wife after I was diagnosed with testicular cancer and I was dating my wife, 17 years later, she woke up with advanced breast cancer, and it was bad. And my wife is an OBGYN who detects it every day, and all of a sudden, our world just came crashing down. Startled. My daughter was 9, my son was 12. I really, you know, I was really preparing to become a single dad because we had no idea. We didn't know what was going to happen and how long it was going to take to get better, and it was pretty far along. And that was a real. You want to talk about catalyst? That was a real disruptive moment for me. And the good news is it's pretty much 9 years, and she's doing great, great, amazing, like miraculous. But I got to tell you, it was a wake up call for me because I started to really take that step back and go, what do I want out of life? Like I was defining myself by my career, by being a survivor. I was doing everything that people expected me to do, which by the way is okay, but like everybody's like, you can run a company. And I was like, I don't want to run a company, but I'm like, I have to. It's a Wharton. Like, how could I turn around and not make this happen? And a couple of crazy things happened along the way that I really tell people on stage, and I want your listeners to understand. Couple of things. Number one, I'm a dad. I'm a dad today, despite the testicular cancer. I got 2 kids, 21 and 19, and they're incredible. And I am so deeply connected to them. I am athletic. I ran that New York City Marathon, as you could see behind me, Brian, my photo, in 2003. And you know what? I tell people today, go run the marathon and then call me. I mean, am I like a super athlete? No, of course not. But I ran that marathon and I crossed that finish line. I'm also smart. I went to Wharton, as we talked about, and I say that in a very humble way because I was told every single day that you're not smart enough to get into an Ivy League school. And I just believed that until I got in and have my MBA. And nobody cares that what I got, the grades I got. I got 19 C's or P's as passes, they said, and that equals MBA. And I am a survivor. And the thing is, I'm a cancer survivor 2 times over, but that's not my identity. That is not my identity. And I share my story on stages across the country for 2 reasons that I really want people in the audience as well as your listeners to understand. I want to connect emotionally with that audience like a brand. And I want my audience to see that I'm just as flawed as they are. Because the truth is, we judge books by its cover. And so when I get on stage and I'm smiling and I look like a nice guy, and everybody's like, well, what are you doing on stage? What do you have to offer me? When I share my story, what I just shared, and I shared a condensed version today, I can see the audience going, whoa, wow, he's real. And the second reason I share that story is because people need to hear the stories of how others conquered obstacles so that they can use that as inspiration to conquer their own. And the truth is, when I started motivational speaking school, I thought I would just share my story. That's it. Get off the stage and life would go on. But one of the things I learned day one was that once you connect with the people on stage, once I connect with the audience, now what am I going to share with them? And you have to give them value because now you got them, they get you, they're in, they're like, wow, this guy is real. Now I go in and I share my value and I share my one word approach. And the reason for that is because if you don't give value, like people, brands, once again, buy brands in a supermarket, if you don't offer value on the stage, you're just a good story that's going to be forgotten in about an hour. But when you leave and you've connected them, like Martin Luther King, I have a dream, when you inspire people to go take action because you have given them something and they remember your story, that is when the connection happens. And I had to learn that. And that's what I try to tell people when I'm on stage. It's like, okay, now you know I'm real. Now let me tell you how I can help you. And then they see that I'm a catalyst and they see that I'm actually walking the talk and I'm not just up there to sell something. I'm up there because I want to change people's lives.
And the fact that that really seeps through in every conversation that you have with me, with other people that I've seen. you know that genuineness of wanting to help people and trying to use you and your story as you say, a catalyst to help improve their own lives, I think is truly uh, inspirational.
People
And
thought I was crazy, and they still do, but I want to change lives because I grew up with no value. I discovered my own value as a catalyst, and I want to leave this earth um, having given people their value. And the truth is, this is what happens when you have cancer at 26, because you end up really thinking a lot sooner than most people, how do I want to be remembered? And I don't blame people that haven't had any of those issues and they are living life and they're like, I don't have to worry about that. But when it happens and you get confronted with that question, it's a blessing I got sick at 26 because I now know how I want to be remembered. And I would not have done that. And that's another reason why you have to be on stages sharing your story and telling people don't wait for that moment. Don't wait until you lose your job. Don't wait for that illness. Understand now who you are and let that drive what you do. So there's a lot of reasons why I'm learning on my journey, why I'm doing what I'm doing. Like I go along just like everybody else and I move and improve as I'm off the stage, what worked, what didn't. And I'm learning how to connect and how to help people win. But that's who I am and I'm owning that now. I give. I like to give. I mean, for years I fought that. I fought it for years because I'm like, you're not supposed to give, you're supposed to take, take, take. That's not how life works. And I learned that through 2 cancers. And that's why I do what I do. Because I want to leave having given back to the world. And that's it. That's the game changer for me.
definitely. And, if we were to unpack that and go back to something that you mentioned a few minutes ago regarding the one word,
Yeah.
that's your core philosophy. And that's really what propels you to bring you and your method to helping people to life.
Yeah.
What led you to, coming up with the one word method, and why is it so important?
Yeah. No, it's a great question. It's so funny. I get a lot of people that ask me. I mean, they ask obviously because that's what I do, but I always laugh. I'm like, I really have to explain to people how this all works because once you get it, you'll understand. And what I really want to do at this point is I want to share what actually happened to me and how this whole thing came to be and why I do what I do today. So it was fall of 2017. I was the head of marketing for a lingerie company, and I literally got up in the afternoon. I was getting a performance report, and it was so bad. I mean, Brian, I thought they gave me the wrong report, and I'm listening as the CEO is telling me this, and I'm like, I think we have the wrong report here. He's like, nope, this is yours. And it was that moment where I got up and I closed the door and I quit my career. I quit right on the spot. And I did it because I realized I couldn't be the cookie cutter marketer that they wanted. And there was some challenges within the organization. But instead of arguing and fighting about it, I took the steering wheel and I'm like, I'm going to drive my own car. I didn't tell anyone. I didn't ask anyone. If I had called you and 4 other people, you would have said, I don't really think that's a good idea. But you know what? I did it at that moment because I knew it was right. Came home that evening, told my wife. She's like, I thought she was gonna just pummel me, and she said, "Congratulations, now go change the world." And I'm like, really? She's like, yeah, you've been wanting to go for a long time, and my story leads up to having she was sick, I was sick. Like I didn't know how to go out and change lives, but I knew at that moment if I accepted that report, that review, I was accepting mediocrity and I wasn't going to do it. And so I left. I was 50. I just turned 50. And I made a decision that I wanted to lead the next phase of my life by my purpose. And, we talk a lot about purpose today in the world. And I think a lot of people feel like that's like a foofy thing, but it's not. I mean, I got to tell you, I literally sat down for about a week or 2 or 3 weeks. I called friends, mentors, I called my therapist, I called everyone. And I'm like, what is my why? And I realized what it was. It was really simple. And it was simply to help young adults reach their goals and dreams quicker than I did. That's it. That simple. Like I wanted people to have an easier trail, journey, path than I did. But to be honest with you, you don't just get up one morning after you say that and go, okay, here's my new business. And so I really thought, I said, like, as crazy as this sounds, you look for the universe to tell you something like that stuff really does happen, because here's what happened next. And it's crazy. I want to take you back to a story about my son, that while I'm sitting here trying to figure out how to make this purpose work, I remembered back to a story where my son, his name is Zach, he came up to me. He was applying to college. He was entering his senior year of high school. And he said to me, "Can you help me prepare for my alumni interviews?" And I said, "Of course. I mean, my career's in brand marketing. I know how to do interviews, no problem." And Brian, I asked him one question. I'll never forget it, in the kitchen. And I'm in this moment now thinking, well, how am I going to bring this purpose to life? And I thought back to that moment in the kitchen. I said to him, "Zach, tell me about yourself." And he looked at me like I had 46 heads. He's like, "I don't even know where to begin." I said, "Tell me anything." He said, "I don't know. I'm a senior. I like video games. I'm smart. I play sports." And I realized at that moment, like literally, he's telling me all the things he does. He doesn't know who he is at his core. He has no idea. And he finally said to me, "Dad, they don't teach us that in high school." And so while I'm sitting there in it's, I think, November of 2017 at this point, and I'm thinking back to that moment 2 years before, I remember at the kitchen saying to myself, maybe I'm going to change the way this kid thinks about himself, like I did in my corporate career. And so the reason why the core value one word approach came about is because that's exactly what I did for the brands I worked on. I would say, how are we going to cut through the clutter and take a brand like Godiva and, in one word, determine its identity, and the identity being the core value they give away. And I'm sitting in the kitchen and I'm realizing I got to treat this kid like a brand, because if he understood his core value, he can interview well, write his applications, and know in 7 seconds in the elevator, the whole elevator pitch, who are you? So I convinced him. Brian, it took a lot of work. I think he was sorry that he asked me for help, but I convinced him to work with me. And we came up with his one word. And I'm sitting there, like I said, I'm thinking back 2 years ago, his word is perseverance. This is a kid who never gives up. And I then said to him in the kitchen, "I want you to now spend the next 2 weeks, and I want you to come up, make believe you are standing in front of that admissions committee, and I want you to come up with a story that demonstrates how you live a perseverant life, because the college is buying you." And this kid came up with an incredible story about sleepaway camp. This is a kid who went to camp for 10 summers. He did not solve world hunger. He was not an entrepreneur. He wasn't traveling the country. Sleepaway camp. But I got to tell you, amazing things happened. He not only aced those interviews, but he got into Cornell. Okay, this is the school he's been dying to go to. He got in, and he's going
Wow.
to be a senior this fall. And it was that moment when I was thinking back to that time, and I went, "Oh my God, maybe I'm going to transform a million lives one word at a time." I wrote that down on a piece of paper. And I got to tell you, dude, I was freaking out at that point, because I'm like, I can't do this. Because all the beliefs in my head, you can't do this. That's crazy. How are you going to go around the world and tell people that in one word they can figure out who they are? So I called a couple of friends, and they were like, "Oh, I think that's a really good idea." Called my therapist. I'm like, "Please tell me this is ridiculous." She's like, "Oh, no, no, no. I actually think it's a really good idea." And she gave me the best piece of advice, which, by the way, I'm telling you this because I didn't want to do this, because I was like, how am I going to put myself out there? Nope, go get a job, get a paycheck, you're done. You can't change the world. And she said to me, my therapist, she said, "I want you to call your financial planner, and I want you to do a 20-year analysis with him." Okay. And I did. I got on the phone. I'm like, he's going to tell me no. He's going to say, "You have to go back to work in 2 years." And he came back and literally said, "You guys are good. Saved enough money. You don't live a big life." And I'm like, "Really?" And literally my wife was like, "You need to go make this happen." And I have to tell you, that's how I chose motivational speaking. Because as a kid, Brian, there was one job I wanted as a kid. I wanted to be a talk show host. That's it. And I thought back to, oh my God, this is full circle. And I chose motivational speaking because I wanted to get on stage and share my message. My message. This is the thing that people need to understand about a brand. The stage is for my message, and my story is the credibility to lock it in. And I decided that I was going to get on stages having no experience, no idea what to do, but I was going to show people that what you do is not who you are, but who you are should drive what you do. And I think it takes only one word to do that. And that's really how this whole idea came crazy. My son, me, and the rest of the world now.
That's insane. And really, I think that if we were talking one words to describe how you actually got to that point, it's insane. But I am so thankful that you did because, bringing things, full circle. We hear about marketing, personal branding, networking, all in silos. And usually we have to have people approach it and have a plan for each one of the elements. And the thing I love about you and your method, aside from your story, but the actual method is no, that's not the right way to go. You have to understand yourself first and what
Right.
you bring to the table,
That's right.
and then apply it to the different elements.
100%. You know what? I would love to give an example of a brand I worked on because I also know from being on stage that once I share some examples and I do an interactive with the audience, they'll understand it. So I want to share the Godiva brand because this is an amazing luxury brand. Everybody knows it. Okay. And I want to ask you a question, Brian. This is what I ask on stage. There's no right or wrong answer, but just tell me how you feel. In a gifting transaction, who is more important in your eyes, the gifter or the recipient? No right answer. Just tell me, who do you think is more important in that transaction if you're giving a gift to someone? Is it the gifter or is it the recipient, the person receiving it?
I'd say the recipient.
Okay. Most people say the recipient, but the truth is the gifter is way more important. And the reason for that is because if you're going to give your significant other an engagement ring and they open that box and they start hysterical crying because it's not the ring they wanted, you there's no doubt the recipient is upset, but the gifter is devastated. They got it wrong. They didn't know the person. And so for years at Godiva, we thought the recipient was the person we were talking to. But in research, we learned it's the person coming in the store. Why? Because Brian, if I know you and you tell me about your significant other and we give you an amazing gift to go bring to give to your significant other, they open it, they're in love, you're in love, everybody's happy. What we realized is we are actually giving generosity. We're not giving chocolate. Why? Because we know from Valentine's Day, thank yous, congratulations, when you want to give somebody a recognition and you just hand them that gold box of Godiva without saying a word, that person, the recipient, knows you went out of your way, you spent money. I must have done something. We call it the Godiva gasp. It used to be Godiva. But the truth is, nobody cares what's inside that gold box. It's the aura of the brand. Now, how do we know that it's generosity? Because people would tell us in research, oh, that lady Godiva, when she was on the horse and she was naked riding through town, it's a legend. It's not true, but people thought she was real. And so that's my point about people buy human connection. So they were buying her story, which by the way, we didn't tell that often. But when we told the story of her riding the town to help the townspeople win, that's generosity. And so what I share with people on stage when we go through this exercise is exactly that. We know Godiva is a brand that gives what? Generosity to the world. Now there's 3,000 chocolates in the aisle. One chocolate does generosity, Godiva. It's the same thing with people. 20 people in an interview now, go in there. What is your core value? What are you giving away? And that's when I can see the audience going, oh, I didn't think of it that way. That's my whole point about branding. Brands give away to help others win. And if you don't understand that as a personal brand, it's going to be hard for you to win because it's not about taking, it's about giving. And that's an example I wanted to share because I want people to understand. And I have a host of brands, many of them, but that one is what taught me the power of one word as a core value to give away to make other lives better.
Love the formula. Definitely do. And it definitely explains why I've always seen Godiva in Macy's and
That's right.
Bloomingdale's.
There you go. There you go. And number Valentine's Day, dude. Okay, if you give M&Ms, or Godiva, call me after you give the M&Ms and tell me if you had a good Valentine's Day. I never said that chocolate, M&M's chocolate's bad. Not at all. They're both amazing chocolate, but the context is what makes those brands win. And it's the same thing with people. Your context in the interview, in an application, in a leadership position, the context is, what are they looking for? Tell them. And so I never talk about the product because the product's not the brand. It's the context of the brand. So on Valentine's Day, do not give M&M's listeners if you want to win. That's not a good thing. There you go.
I love that you brought up context because I think it really provides a great bridge into community
Yeah.
because
Yeah.
buzzword of the year aside from social distancing
And pivot.
and pivot, right? So the stuff that we live through, it's community, social distancing, and pivot, definitely.
Yeah.
But going back to community, you know, you have this incredible knowledge. You're able to really connect with people and also bring you and who you are to the table to really effectuate change. But in the sense of a group setting and talking about community, how do you use your voice and platform to build that following around your movement, and how can others do the same?
Yeah, this is this is a really great, challenging question, and I'm going to be really candid. I'm building my community as I go. It is not an overnight game, no way. But I will share a couple of things that I'm learning. Number one, move and improve. I call it MVP, minimal viable product. You want to get out there. You want to get out there with building that community. What works, what doesn't. But I'll tell you a couple of things. I have built, and we talked about this before we went live. I have built my entire business and personal brand as a catalyst on what I call the Costco sampling method. Okay. And literally, I give away so much. I do a lot of free work to get paid. And the reason for that is because you have to build your story. People connect with stories. And if I learned one thing, especially at my age now, you're only as good as the people that know you. That's it. So if you wait for the phone call at home, good luck, because the only people that know you are the people that are going to call. And so the reason I call it the Costco sampling strategy is because I always come at it from my corporate career. When you go to Costco and you're up and down the aisles eating and people go there for lunch, they're not feeding you for the sake of feeding you. They're feeding you because they want you to buy the product. And they know, and I know this from 25 years in marketing, that the easiest way to get someone to buy the product is to put it in their mouth. And it's the same theory for me. So to build my community, that's exactly what I'm doing. I will reach out to people. I literally will reach out to someone that I think has success in their genes, young entrepreneur, young high school student, and I will offer them my program to work with them. And all I ask for in exchange is that you do the program, and that if we have success, that you help me by telling someone else and someone else and someone else and someone else. And I have to tell you, once again, friends think I'm crazy, but that is how I'm building my business. Because the minute I lock someone in with their one word and they get into a school like Penn or Brown, all of a sudden they're like, you got to work with this guy, Rich. You got to work with this guy, Rich. And then the next person that comes, because I have value now I charge. In addition to that, I also think it's really important, and I'm learning and building my community, especially online, is give value. Like, don't just get on social media for the sake of just putting up a post without value. And I learned that the hard way because I would do that. And then I'd get my mentor saying, give them a call to action, like tell them something about marketing or branding. And it's crazy because one of the things I do a lot now is I'll put a one-word post up. If you look at my LinkedIn, I'll put a one word up. And I started realizing, oh, now people are connecting and it's all about the one word. That's the promise. He's the catalyst. He's helping us disrupt the way he thinks. And that's when I'm starting to see the consistency, because that is the whole game here. You don't have to post. I don't post every day. I don't have the time, but I'm consistent about what I post. And so I always say to people, give away your core value. So as a catalyst, one of the things I try to do in my post, in my building of my community, is disrupt the way you think about branding, like we're talking about now. And little by little, when I work with someone, I can see them interacting with my comment. I can see somebody else that came in through some other means that I spoke to interacting with my comment. And so the whole idea that I tell people is craft your story through human connection. I mean, just network as much as possible, give away what you have. It takes 10 years to become an overnight sensation. I'm in this for the marathon. Branding is a marathon, not a sprint. So I wish I had an answer like if you do ABC, you're going to win. But I will say consistency, be very thoughtful in giving away your value and help others win. And throw your story in there, because I could tell you the posts that do well when I share my story. And I don't just share like I had cancer. I'll share I had cancer, and at 26, I realized I needed to decide how I want to live the rest of my life. Here's what I did. There's a message in there that I'm learning. It's all about just practice and keep going. And little by little, you build that momentum, and you get that thought leadership, and you get that community. But for me, I'm not even close to that yet, but I'm seeing it come now. I'm starting to really see people that are helping me spread my message because they won and they now want to have somebody else win.
I couldn't agree more, and especially on the point of sharing your story. And only recently uh, realized that point of the only way people are going to connect with you, and really, if you're going to try to be genuine about it, is by sharing your story. Like for me on LinkedIn, the number one post I've ever done happened 4 weeks ago when I shared a story of how I connected with people with bus companies when I was 7 years old. And I wrote letters.
And it tells me right there why you're on a bus today. Like, that's my point. Like, I even learned, I'm like, holy crap, this guy loved buses as a kid. I'm in. Credibility, done. But that's because people are buying you, Brian. They're buying the human. I tell this to every young entrepreneur. People buy human connection. They're buying you. They bought Sarah Blakely. They bought Howard Schultz. They bought Steve Jobs. The minute you shared that story, I remember the post. I'm like, how amazing that this kid has had buses and motor in his automobile in his head for life. I'm in. Now you tell me the propulsion on a jet, I'm going to believe you because you have that. That's all it takes. And I can't tell you how many people will say to me, I don't want to share my story. I'm afraid to. So here's my answer back to them. Number one, park it up, pack it up and park, because people connect with humans, but you also get to share the story you want to share. The minute you give too much, you can't pull it back, but you can manage that. And that's what brands do. That's PR crisis. It's the same concept in the corporate world, but you decide, I don't share my whole story. My God, your head would spin. And I share enough to get people to understand what I'm about, and you get to drive that car. And so I try to help people because, Brian, you can't win if you don't share your story. There's no vulnerability. Brene Brown would tell you to pack it up and go home. You have to tell me what you've been through so I can connect with you and believe what you want to go now do to change the world.
Definitely. And I think it all comes down to the one question of, are you comfortable enough sharing that story with other people? And I think that also doubles back to, are you comfortable enough yourself for you to share that story with yourself?
You know what? I'm so glad you said that, because minute you said that, I had this thought in my head because I'm listening to a lot of podcasts on, this subject of
Yeah.
vulnerability. I'm a big Brene Brown fan. And I remember in motivational speaking school that somebody taught us that there's a fine line between being credible and being pitied. And the reason why I think that I'm able to really go up and talk about my story now is because I'm here to help others win. I'm not on the stage to get the pity and the, oh my God, that a boy, you're great. I'm in service to others, and you have to get comfortable with your story. Otherwise, you're going to get on stage and people are going to feel sorry for you and they're going to forget your message. And I laughed about that in the motivational speaking school because I was like, who does that? But if you don't do the therapy like I did and you don't really self-reflect, I now realize, like, I'm so comfortable about my story because I want people to discover who they are. And my story helps aid that, versus you don't have to feel sorry for me. Best thing that ever happened to me was cancer. Best thing that ever happened to me was being told I wasn't smart or I wasn't athletic enough. That's not why I'm on stage. I want to inspire all of you to get over that like I did, come to terms with it, see the value in that, and then use that as fuel Now I understand when you're in service to others, you're ready to go. And if you're not in service, then don't go up on stage yet, or don't put your brand out there yet. Get comfortable with your story first, discover who you are. And once that's together, I promise you, you'll be ready to go. So it's an interesting point that you bring that up, because that's the bridge to I'm ready to be a personal brand. When I realize that I can go help others with my story, not I don't want to share my story because I don't want people to know who I am. It's not possible to do that then.
Definitely. And, bringing all of that and applying it, well, I'll talk about myself for a minute, but applying it to myself, I look at it as, we have this thing in the bus business where before you pull out the bus to do a trip, you do a pre-trip and you make sure
Right.
you have a checklist, make sure everything works okay. And if it doesn't, you get it fixed. And I think that whole concept applies to, you know, having and putting yourself out there, because you have to be comfortable enough with yourself and go through that list of all the things that you would have to talk about,
That's right.
and you have to talk about it with yourself first.
100%.
And if it's there, if you go down the list and there's something that you're not comfortable with, you have to fix that first before you're ready to, before you go out there and share, because if you don't, that's the thing that's going to hold you back.
100%. And then the audience is going to feel sorry for you and they're going to miss your message. And the more I start doing that on stages now, and the more I come to terms with really understanding that, I get it now. I get what I wasn't ready to do this 10 years ago. No way. I hadn't done the work. And that's why I think a lot of people hit a wall, is because they leave their career, they want to go do something on their own, and they're afraid and there's fear. There's a story behind there that you have to get comfortable with to be able to then say, I can go do that. This is hard for me, Brian. Like, I get up every morning and have to like get out of bed and go, you're changing the world. That's what you got to focus on. You're helping others. You're helping. Like, I don't just get up and do it. I got to work at it. It's a mind game. I work out with my mind every day.
See, you are athletic.
Yeah, yeah. Very true. If the mind was any indication of that, I have 3 gold medals right now. Absolutely. No, totally.
We've spoken about how you work with entrepreneurs and students and that you're out to change lives. And, with this method of one word and your approach to and thinking of personal branding, does the application of that method change based on who you are, or is it something where it's a blanket framework where you apply it to the situation you're in and doesn't matter who you are or what you're doing at the point?
Yeah, no, great question. My program is universal. Any age, anyone can do it. I encourage everyone to discover their core value. But here's what I also learned, and I think it's a really good it's just a good piece of learning for how I'm building my business. I went out and I just started doing it and I started seeing where the chips fall. Once I tied it to something that the audience cared about, that's when people started to perk up. What do I mean by that? When I'm in high schools, I tailor my talk to the college application. First essay, what are you going to tell a committee about who you are? When I talk to colleges, I'm tailoring it to the first 7 seconds of that interview. When you get in and you're the 100th person and you're going to say, at my core, I am a catalyst, and here's why. And when I talk to young entrepreneurs, which I do a lot of work with young entrepreneurs because I actually love working with them, because it allows me to do both personal branding and then helping them build their company or their venture. But when I talk to young entrepreneurs, what I tell them is, you have to take your personal brand and your business venture and merge it with this core value. Because when you do that, I mean, this is exactly what Howard Schultz did with Starbucks and community. He was all about community. Steve Jobs did it with Apple. He was all about simplicity. That's why he wore a black turtleneck and jeans on stage, simplicity. Sarah Blakely did it with Spanx and confidence. And when you merge the two and you put yourself in front of your venture, you win. And that's what I spend a lot of time helping young entrepreneurs understand, because a lot of them will come to me and they'll say, but I have a product and it's my brand. And the product's not your brand. You're the brand. And if you merge the two over time, and the analogy I give a lot of young entrepreneurs is the parent kid. Kid is born, they're born a blank slate. The parent puts their core value into the kid goes to college, and all of a sudden people are like, Brian, you're so much like your dad, because you got his core value. It's the same thing with a young entrepreneur. Nurture that venture by taking your core value and marrying it, so that 20 years from now, like Howard Schultz, Sarah Blakely, and Steve Jobs, you can go do other things because your brand, your venture is now a brand and it has that core value that you gave it. And that's the application that I work with young entrepreneurs. And then I have a whole consult that one word and build their brand. But it's the idea for the young entrepreneur, anybody, the person is the brand, not the product, not the venture, not the application. You're the brand.
Definitely. And, I definitely will want to loop in a few of our audience questions now
Yeah.
because I think it provides a really incredible segue into some of the questions. So from Nora, her first question is, can your brand change or evolve over your lifetime or career? So I definitely think that there's an application here.
Such a great question. I get that question. The branding question is the one I get the most, and then I get the same one. So here's my answer to that. Your core value never changes, but you adapt it to make yourself relevant with today's world. What do I mean by that? I use Madonna as the best example. Madonna is irreverent. That is her core value. Madonna didn't decide one day to wake up and be a nice girl. Okay. She got up and said, I'm going to reinvent myself every 5 years. And at 60 years old, she can go to the Met Gala in a see through skirt with a thong on because she's irreverent. So, my answer to you is if you change your core value, you don't have the right one. But if I've always been a catalyst, but I reinvent as culture and society moves forward because then you're not relevant. And relevant, your value would be, your core value would be irrelevant if you didn't adapt it and reinvent yourself. So when we went from TV and print advertising to digital marketing, I had to reinvent myself to be a catalyst in the digital world. So it's a great question because if you look at the icons over time, Mariah Carey, diva, she'll always be a diva. She reinvents diva. If you think about it that way, that's how iconic status is born because they've been consistent, but they've reinvented their core value, but they've always remained consistent. And that is, I love that question because I challenge people, you have the wrong core value then, if you think you're going to change it. Because I've been a catalyst my whole life. I just didn't know it. I didn't have the words for it like I do now.
Definitely. And I think a really important distinction to make here is, you mentioned young entrepreneurs, the folks that you primarily work with, but also, carrying your core value as you go along in life is also really important. So how does that really change when you're kind of like at a crossroads, you're in the middle of your life, you're trying to pivot? How does it change at all, or is it?
No, no, what happens is, even during the pandemic, like I'm a perfect example. And Brian, we talked about this, like my motivational speaking career on stages is pretty much, gone for now. But because I'm a catalyst and I disrupt the way people think about who they are, I was able to pivot to a podcast, which I'm launching very shortly, virtual webinars, coaching, consulting. So what changes is the environment around me. But what doesn't change, I'm not known for being a speaker. I want to be known for being a catalyst, which is you're purchasing my core value, but I used motivational speaking. Now I use coaching, consulting, podcasting, virtual webinars. So I want people to get off of the thought that my channel or my product defines who I am. Who you are defines what you go do, not the other way around. And that's why I got caught up in that web of thinking that my identity was with my job. And when I lost my job, I felt like I had no identity. That's not the way to live. The way to live is to say, I'm a catalyst. That's who I am. I'm going to go figure out something else to do and give that core value to another industry, another vertical, because that's what people are paying me for, to be the disruptor in a situation that allows me to inspire, motivate, and empower people.
Definitely. So it's really the point of no matter who you are and where you are in life, it's finding the application. And
100%. Pivot, relevancy, adaptability. You got it. I can't say that enough because then you would be changing yourself every 10 years or 5 years or four, and you start to become nothing to nobody. That's when you get into that loop of, I don't know who you are because you're trying to be everything to everyone. That's not the way to build a personal brand. 100%.
one of the big issues today is unemployment and the fact that a lot of folks are actively looking for jobs.
Yeah.
What's your advice in regards to sharing your one word and sharing your brand with a potential employer? How should people go about that if they're actively on the job search and going in for an interview?
Yeah, so a couple of things. I would say, first off, it's all about networking. And so, a couple of things. I think that when you are out there, you should be offering the first thing you should be asking people is, how can I help you? Any networking situation, even if you're meeting somebody for coffee and you know there's a job there, how can I help you? So, right away, you put the onus on putting yourself out there, servant leadership, and then someone's going to say to you, well, what can I do for you? But the other thing to do, which a lot of people don't think about, is start putting content on LinkedIn about your core value. Like, I'm in the brand game, so I'm a disruptor. So if I start putting information on how to really think about building your personal brand and disrupt the way you think, and now people start reading my content, and then I'm interested maybe in calling up Nike or Peloton. Any industry can needs a catalyst. Once they start going to check up on you, Google you, and they start to see, you know what? Wow, he really is very effective in thinking about building his personal brand around his industry. You start to become known, and it's no longer about getting a job. We're so focused, Brian, and I get it because I've been through it 3 times in my career. We're so focused on, I got to get the job, I got to get the job. What I would say to people is, go show them your core value in action in a networking situation. Bring something that will help them win. Know something about them ahead of time. Ask them, how can I show you? Put some stuff out on LinkedIn, network with the right people that know your core value, and you'll start to see the game change because people are going to see you for much bigger than just a resume or a job.
Definitely. And I think everyone is always looking for a way to stand out, and definitely it is a core way to do it. And you have to be really intentional and have the strategy behind it and not just mishmash, reach out to people and just ask questions on how can I get hired, but you have to be really intentional, do your
Yeah,
homework.
100% know about them. Yeah, that's, give before you receive. It's a game changer. I didn't do it for years and I was like, oh, that worked.
You know, we talked about a lot of things today, and it is really, really incredible just to hear it from your perspective. But if we were to wrap things up, tie it in a nice little box,
Yeah.
what are your top three tips for someone to grow their personal brand beyond social media and into the real world?
Great. Love that question. I'll tell you the 3 things I always say to people on stage and, all the work I do. Number one, people buy human connection. You are the brand. That's it. I don't care how great your product is. You can have the best coffee in the world. You are the brand. The person that's bringing it to market, marry the two. So number one, people buy human connection. The second thing I say, which is really important, be the guide, never the hero of your story. People do not want to help heroes win. You need to be the guide on stage and guide your core value message into the hands of the audience. They're the hero. The college is the hero picking the best class. The job, the company is the hero picking the best applicant. The organization needs to give that title to somebody, they win. So if you have a guide with that mentality and get on stage and share your message, you're going to win. Okay. So be the guide, never the hero is number two. And then the third thing I say to people, and this is probably the hardest, and I do this with my kids all the time, nurture your future self. Let me say that again, nurture your future self. And how do you do that? You have to be anticipatory in your thinking so that you can drive your own car. You have to think, where do I want to land? You have to think about what is important in life to you. What are the mountains you want to climb? And be anticipatory about that so that you can nurture that future self. Otherwise, you're the world's going to do it for you. If you're in a job and that's all you focus on and then you lose your job, what do I do next? So I always say to people now, and especially my kids, there's more to life than just your career. We live in a different world, digital, everything's exposed. So if you nurture that self by being anticipatory, think ahead. Don't think about the job you're interviewing for. Think about the job after that. And is that job I'm going to go take now going to help me get to the next level? If it doesn't, don't take the job unless you have to. But if you think one step ahead, that's going to make you a much stronger life and a much happier life because then it'll be easy to decide that job's not for me because it's not going to get me to the end. And if you begin with the end in mind, what you realize is, and I say this all the time, there are many different ways to get to Philadelphia from New Jersey. There's many highways. Just get off the exit and get on another highway. But you won't know that unless you knew you were going to Philadelphia. So if you begin with the end in mind and nurture that future, you're going to make some mistakes. Of course you are, but it's going to be easier for you to say yes or no and do it on your own terms and not listen to what other people are saying.
Couldn't agree more. And I think that's a wonderful place, to leave our discussion. And, you know, if there's anything I've learned from you in the time I've known you, it's you have to be intentional and in every action that you take, no matter if it's business or in your personal life, because it's all interrelated. And especially in today's, online world, things there's so much cross pollination. That's kind of the term I love using, cross pollination, and
Yeah, I love it.
how however way you can cross pollinate ideas from one industry or one part of your life to another, it's building more bridges and more connections. And as my mentor Michael Roderick says, spinning webs.
You
And the more
bet.
webs you can spin, the more that they will interact with each other.
Love it. Love it. Listen, thank you so much. This has been incredible. I just want to change lives. I just want everybody to know who they are. That's it. It's really that simple. It's just like I can't say it any other way. And if we take the time to self-reflect, I'm telling you, there's so many game-changing moments that come out of it. And if I can get up and leave a corporate career that was really successful and do this, anybody can. Because if you have a dream, just go make it happen.
Definitely. And before we let you go, just want to show our audience and the folks listening and watching, who you are online so they know where to reach out to you. So it's therichkeller.com. And here you have, a little bit more about the one word method, about your score workbook, and if people are interested in having and booking you to speak to the organization, it's right over here. So I can attest that firsthand you were an incredible speaker.
Thank you
So
very much. I also, on the first page here, I have a quiz that I created where you could pick your favorite brand and it'll tell you the brand's one word. And the whole idea is that's the core value the brand gives to you. What's your core value? What's your one word? What are you giving to others? So it's a little bit of fun. I try to, make it, interactive. And I really appreciate the time. I'm on a mission to transform a million lives, and I have a lot of work to do. And just giving me this opportunity to share why I think it's so powerful to think like a brand is just really appreciated, and I'm really grateful. Thank you.
definitely, and thank you again so much for everything you've done for me and everything you're doing for our community here with Blind Run. So
Yeah, one last thing. I have a free link which I will give you, Brian, but the link is go.oncehub.com/Rich Keller. Once again, go.oncehub.com/Rich Keller. I do a free call to anybody that wants to talk to me. You want to continue the convo, you want to learn more about what I do, you just want to call and say hi, please do. That's my Costco method of getting into other people's worlds. Catch me on LinkedIn. Just type in Rich Keller Catalyst. I come up. Always put your one word as the first word of your profile. And Brian, I can't wait to get together again when this pandemic's over. And thank you so much.
definitely. And remember, everyone, find your one word, be intentional about what you do, and be Costco. That's
There you
be
go. Right?
Costco.
You bet.
All right. So,
Take
Rich,
care.
thank you. Have a good day, everybody.